What's up? Welcome back. Well, I'm here again. And right off the bat, I need to know, has anyone else seen this movie? I saw it a really long time ago. It wasn't in the 90s, it had to be in the 2000s. You know, late at night, one of those low budget movies that you watch late at night because it has like a good premise. And all I remember about it is that there were tourists from the future who come back to look at disasters in the past. And I couldn't remember who was in it. I don't remember what happened at the end. I just remember watching this movie, or at least half of it, and being really interested in it. But for whatever reason, I couldn't remember the name. And it took me a really long time to find out the name of this movie. I had to go Google it. Well, it turns out the movie I'm looking for is called The Grand Tour: Disaster in Time, but it's also known as Timescape. So I don't remember what it was called when I first watched it. I think it may have been on the Sci-Fi Network or something. I don't remember at all. I just remember this premise being awesome. Imagine my surprise when I pull up the trailer and I'm like, oh man, Jeff Daniels is in this movie? And the little girl from Jurassic Park? I don't know how I didn't remember any of that. But anyway, Timescape, or Disaster in Time, is one of those movies from the 90s that had a pretty small budget, but they made it stretch as far as they could. You can tell that this is a pretty low budget movie with some of the special effects. Although it's not an action heavy special effects heavy movie, there are some scenes with like miniatures. It just looks like miniatures. But the charm of the movie, like you can kind of ignore it. So let me talk about one of the coolest things about this movie. It's the sheer idea of it. Tourists that come back from the future to watch disasters in the past, but without interrupting the disaster or preventing it from happening. It's against their rules. Jeff Daniels' character is a widower. Actually, the movie opens with a flashback of the accident that killed his wife, and that recurs throughout the movie, and it's kind of important to the plot. His daughter's played by Ariana Richards, who a year later would star in Jurassic Park. The father and daughter duo are refurbishing an old inn to make it ready for customers. It's not quite ready yet, but they get a busload of tourists from out of nowhere. Jeff Daniels and the bus driver notice that the group is a little strange. They're all like really good looking, really in shape, and just a little odd. Even though the inn isn't ready, the group loves it, and they pay him a ton of cash to go ahead and let them stay at the unfinished inn. Now, I don't want to give away much more because it really would kind of ruin the movie for you if I told you much more than that, but I will say this. The movie moves at a pretty good pace, and what would normally be the climax in a movie like this, it isn't. It's kind of like the midpoint, maybe a little bit past the midpoint, and then the movie becomes even more kind of insane and even better. The movie does a great job of establishing a small town feel, and you get to know the characters pretty well. Jeff Daniels' character comes up with a pretty creative way to win in the end, and that's kind of the charm of the movie. There's no big action scenes. He's not some superhero. He's a regular guy who discovers something and uses it to his advantage. Timescape was written and directed by David Toy. I'm probably saying that wrong, but he wrote and directed The Arrival, Chronicles of Riddick, Pitch Black, and so on. It's kind of hard to nail down the exact release date for this movie. I've seen 1991 and 1992. Most of the documentation I see says 1992, so I'm going to go with that. I gotta say, I was so glad I figured out what this movie was called so I could look it up. It just so happens it's streaming on Tubi and it's on YouTube. So perfect timing. I found it, watched it. I was like, oh man, I remember why I like this movie now. It's pretty awesome. I was born in the 70s, so I grew up watching TV movies and the Stephen King adaptations and things like that on TV and on the big screen and on cable. And this movie really reminds you of a Stephen King adaptation on television. Even though it's a PG-13 movie, it has that feel and that look of those 90s TV movies and miniseries, and it's just so interesting. One thing I'll say about how the story plays out, Jeff Daniels' character does something that you wish a lot of characters would do in movies, and that's figure out what's obviously going on a lot faster. Now, yeah, it's kind of outlandish that you figure out something that has to do with like time travel or whatever, but he kind of put the clues together pretty quick and figured out what was going on, and it wasn't some end of the movie revelation or anything like that. He figures it out early on, and that's the catalyst for a lot of the problems that happen in the movie. So yeah, has anyone else seen this movie? I'm really curious. I mean, it's on Tubi, so obviously someone's seen it, but I've never heard anyone ever speak of this movie. and I thought I dreamt it for a while because it had been so long since I had seen it. So hope you enjoyed this. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I'll try to bring more of these. I'm going to look up some more movies that I haven't seen in a long time. The problem is I can't remember the names of those movies, so bear with me, but I love going back and finding these old movies that I loved but haven't seen in 20 plus years maybe. So once again, thanks for watching, and I'll be back.